Hi, welcome back and welcome to the second lecture for Module 5. This one will be significantly shorter than our last video so that I can get you started on watching the documentary that has been recommended to help us work through all of the issues that we're learning this time around in our module. All right, so in our last lecture video, you took a look at the differences between climate action, climate justice, and we looked at some of the ways in which climate change action is resisted. So what remains for us to do now is take a closer look at two insights that are raised by the intersection of technology, nature, and the future. So let's get started. So let's take a look at insight number 1. And it's this, that technology is the cause and cure of global climate change. And we often make this assumption that the cure for climate action is found, it can be found in creating better products, finding other energy solutions. And while these could be the case, there are some issues and limitations to this. So we do need to think very carefully through these assumptions. So the idea that technology is the cause and cure of climate change is, on the surface, it seems like it could work, that, the practices and things that are driving this global warming and changing climate are things that are produced by human patterns. So it's natural to think that, well, if we change the patterns, we can change the outcome of the patterns. And this calls into question, I think, and gives us an opportunity to be a bit more critically minded when we're thinking of how to be better citizens now and in the future. But on the point of the central assumption here in Insight 1 is an example, right? So we have the idea that, well, if we just change how vehicles are powered, we could cut down on an immense amount of pollution that is driving climate change. But what we need to keep in mind is that both petrol-powered and battery-powered cars contribute to damaging the climate, just in different ways. Whereas petrol-powered vehicles, they emit gases that cause solar rays to be trapped in our atmosphere, therefore raising the global temperature. For battery-powered cars, there's still not a satisfactory way of managing the disposal of spent batteries because they contain a number of materials and chemicals that are incredibly damaging to the environment when they are combined to create the power cell for a vehicle. So what we see here is, yes, having a battery-powered car or an electric-powered car can change and mitigate some of the environmental damage of petrol. It actually, but it opens the opportunity for other forms of environmental damage. This brings us to a little bit of a thought piece. And here we can sort of question whether or not a technological fix could solve an environmental problem. Now, if you recall way back in the early days of our class, we had talked a little bit about how poorly a technological fix does in solving a social problem. And I remember we chatted a little bit about, the development of the subway system in Toronto and in New York City and in Chicago. They happened all around the same time. And the thinking here was because there was a health and sanitation crisis in the downtown cores of these cities, the technological fix was to build a mass transportation system that can get people out of the core of the city and into suburbs. So the development of the suburbs and subway technology was a technological fix to a social problem, but it still didn't solve the social problem. When you have people who are crammed together in poor housing with poor sanitation infrastructure, you're still going to get high rates of disease and death. So in the same vein that we're asking whether or not a technological fix can solve a social problem, when you participate in this case study here, you are essentially asking whether or not a technological fix can solve an environmental problem. And you're going to be doing this through consideration of the case of plastic bottle paving. And I have to say, it is a really remarkable innovation that takes plastics out of landfill and out of recycling plants where only a fraction of them actually ever do go under the full process of recycling. And here they're given a new life and turned into the paving materials for roadways. So what you're going to do in this little case study discussion exercise is talk about the positive and negative impacts of plastic bottle paving, but also consider your responses to whether or not technological fixes are able to solve environmental problems. Do they differ from social problems in your view? So when you are feeling like you can answer this question, you're going to pop into this little comment area and share with us your insights on this interesting question. But let's get back to our lecture here. So if insight number one was about our assumptions that technology can save us from causing more damage to the climate, insight number two gets us thinking about how it is that humans relate to nature. And specifically, insight number two addresses our assumptions about nature and humans' place in it. So really, the central idea to this insight and assumption is, what do we assume about the natural world? In this section of our notebook, I have a little think stop for us that gets us to think about three key words that we feel that best represents our assumptions about the natural world. I've gotten us started. I think that our assumptions about the natural world is that the natural world is renewable, that the natural world is self-regulating, so that just means that even if things go extinct or an environmental crisis occurs, that somehow things will balance out environmentally. Remember, these are assumptions. And also the assumption that nature is uncontrollable. So how about you pause the video now and add in your three keywords that you find represents your assumptions about the natural world. And remember, there's no right or wrong answers here. It's just a matter of sharing and seeing what we come up with and seeing how we're similar and how we're different. So take a pause now, and I'll see you back in the lecture slideshow. Hi, welcome back. So now that you have had an opportunity to think about your assumptions about the natural world, let's delve into this topic a little more deeply. So humans throughout time have long held some central assumptions about nature. We have viewed it overwhelmingly as something that is eternal and infinite. So that just means like we just believe it's always been there and there is just so much of it. It is infinitely there. So even if we hack down or sully up part of it, it'll grow back. It'll be fine. We tend to view it as ever-present so that it is kind of always there. It's what surrounds us and envelops us. As one of my assumptions about nature entailed, we do believe that it's renewable, that it will grow back or regenerate somehow. And again, one of my assumptions about nature is that it's self-regulating. So as I mentioned, that there's a belief that nature will somehow right itself, even if it has been damaged irreparably. In addition to assumptions about the kind of ever-presentness of nature, we also view it from a very particular perspective. We view it from what is called the anthropocentric perspective. So anthros is the Latin word for human or man, and then centric just means centered. So if you see this on an exam, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, you kind of can break down the root of the word and find the correct response. See, learning. So to say that our view about nature is from the human perspective, we tend to think of it as something that exists solely for our use. And we see this in many of the world's major religious texts, that this idea that God or gods had gifted humanity sole use of everything in the world for their ends only. We often see assumptions that humans are the masters of nature, that humans can somehow control or tame or figure out how to access the raw and amazing power of nature and use it for our own ends. We also have an anthropocentric assumption that nature is knowable and therefore controllable. So if we understand it, we know how to master and control it. And these assumptions taken together have caused no end of amazing innovations on one hand, but also a great amount of devastation for both humans and nature on the other. And I have here sort of this backside of a book that deals with the ways in which technological innovations, while they change the world, sometimes for the better, it often results in competition and exploitation and just sheer profiteering off of the destruction of nature, but also the misery of other people. So we're sort of seeing how our assumptions of nature reach back into our last lecture, where we were talking about structural inequalities. So nature and the environment, when we view it from an anthropocentric lens, we are also kind of replicating inequality and problematic assumptions that are really hard to shake and that are ultimately very damaging to people and to the environment. So I have included in our notebook a quick history of the ideas of Romanticism. And Romanticism was an artistic and literary movement that grew out of Europe. And the way in which it resists technological innovations and stands up for the kind of beauty and stoicism of nature is a really interesting perspective to get us to think about how it is that we carry forth a lot of these romantic ideals and ideologies into our present day, and how this ideological movement now underpins a great deal of environmental protection ideas that we take for granted to this day. So what I'd love for you to do right now is to take a look at this video and take a note of what forms of resistance do you see used by various people in the Romantic movement, or even in the ideals of Romanticism itself. And I'd like you to spend a little bit of time thinking about how the Romantic movement continues to inform our modern ideas about nature. So let's pause this video, hop over to our notebook, and take a look at this really interesting history of Romantic ideology now. I'll see you back in a minute. Hi there, welcome back. We're in our final stretch now to finishing up this module. So before the pause, you took a look at the history of Romanticism. And isn't it interesting how a set of aesthetic and literary ideas have gone on to basically become such an important undergirding for how we think about human nature and the natural world. It's really remarkable how persistent some of these ideas are. And hopefully you can kind of see the connection where the anthropocentrism of human ideas about nature and about technology and innovation have a bit of an edge to them, right? Because we have some very good reasons to be mistrustful about the use and future of technologies. So it is just something really interesting for you to think with and think through as you move on throughout this course. The last piece that I would like for us to engage with in this module is to take a look at a documentary. It is by the Dutch Broadcasting Corporation. It's called Beyond the Green Horizon. And I have it posted here in our notebook that you can get comfy and click on. It's about 45 minutes or so. So you can watch this at your convenience. But what I'd like you to do while you're watching this documentary on the future of energy technologies and sort of some of the expectations and anticipations of these environmental technologies. What I'd like you to do after you've done watching that is to select one of these questions to reflect on in the comment box here. So you can choose any one of these. You can look at, looking at the difference between the initiatives between China and the United States. You can answer the question about how the transition towards sustainable energy can change the balance of power throughout the world. Or you might want to answer the question about the Green Revolution and how it changes the way that we live, work, and move around in the future. It's a really fascinating documentary, and I'm pretty certain you're going to enjoy watching it too. So, to that end, I wanted to wish you a really heartfelt congratulations. You have made it through all 5 modules in this course, and I'm so proud of you. We've covered a lot of really interesting topics and hopefully thought about things in a little bit of a different way. And, you know, the journey doesn't stop here completely. You are going to be learning as you go forward and as you practice thinking about these ideas well into the future. And I do hope that they serve you well. Just a quick reminder, quiz number 2 will open up on the 30th of November, which is Monday. And it will be due by 5 p.m. on Friday, November 4th. So that will be your last assessment in association with these learning modules. So it's a little wee quiz. You'll see more information posted about it in our full module on Blackboard under the Do section. So I'll give you some details on how to prepare for that. Otherwise, we have made it to the end. Hooray for us! I hope this video finds you well and that you are finding your way to the end of the semester. Alrighty, if you need me, you know where I'll be. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.